Good evening. Welcome to part 3 of my Hancock Tower trip from 2007. We're finally actually getting towards Hancock Tower. We have one last side trip. And I need to make a thing for the previous things. I've been calling it Shepardstown Junction. I've been mistaking it for Shenandoah Junction, which is a little bit down the same line. This is just Shepardstown Interlocking in Shepardstown, West Virginia. And we'll go over where all that is and my mistake. I've been to both, and I even went back to this one later in 2017 in the winter, right before it was re-signaled. But I'll give a quick explanation of how all that stuff works and what's important about it before we go back. So we're starting at the B&O, and we're going to have some N&W action before going back to B&O for the remainder of the day. And we're going to see... we'll see what parts of Hancock we hit today or whatnot, but probably going to get a good chunk of it done. So I first want to go to the map. Where were we first? So on the line diagram, Brunswick Yard is right there. There's Harper's Ferry where we ended yesterday. And then Shepardstown is actually not that far. It's due south of Hagerstown, which is up there. At the point where the Norfolk and Western H line crosses the Potomac River. Today, this line has gone from an afterthought in the N&W days to effectively being Norfolk Southern's northeast coast, north-south freight corridor. And since Conrail was broken up, CSX has the direct route, crossing D.C. on the Long Bridge, going around on the Anacostia connection, and then up to Baltimore and Ohio, the Capital Sub to Baltimore, around the Beltline, and then up the Philly Sub to Philly, then on the former Conrail Trenton line to Trenton, and then to the New York metro area. Norfolk Southern is a slightly more circuitous route coming out on the Lehigh line via Allentown, Reading, and Harrisburg, but in this case it crosses the river on the former Reading Lurgan branch to the town through Chambersburg, where it switches to the old PRR alignment down into Hagerstown. At this point, this is where Conrail used to do a lot of interchange with N&W, both N&W and CSX, but today it's no longer an interchange. N&W just through routes its trains via Shepardstown, all the way down to Front Royal, Virginia, at the north end of Shenandoah National Park, where it makes a abrupt left-hand turn on the old Southern B line to Manassas, at which point it can continue to Atlanta, New Orleans, Charlotte, and other points in the south. So that's just sort of an interesting way of how the Northeast Rail goes. So if there's a problem, let's say the Baltimore tunnels have a fire, CSX is going to reroute usually via Hagerstown, but that's the circuitous route, the pathway that they have to take, because those are the only two through freight lines in the Northeast, because Amtrak is now passenger only. Granted, there's a couple of secondary tracks, like they can go cross country via York if they really, really had to, but that would be nothing that I would expect. Anyway, Shepardstown is a really nice place. For those of you who don't know, the N&W had a fairly controlling interest by the Pennsylvania Railroad. I think it was a 1/3 interest outright, but the PR effectively controlled it. But they in the time of rail regulation, they were prohibited from exercising that control to any great degree, but the engineering standards of the N&W are by far the most northern of a below the Mason-Dixon line railroad, unless you count the C&O. I mean, I guess the C&O and B&O would have been our northeastern, but as part of NS, N&W is the heavily engineered bit. It used position light signals, although a route system. Like the PR, that shows more additional PR influence. And the PR, unfortunately, had to shell its stake. The N&W was one of the most profitable investments that PR had, but they were forced to sell as part of a condition of, I think, an additional merger attempt. I don't know if it was with the New York Central, but whatever it is, the ICC forced them to sell, then blocked the merger, then arranged the Penn Central thing that didn't work out very well. Shepardstown Interlocking is the north end of controlled siding on the H-line. The H-line uses a single track with 1 mile passing sidings as originally built. Today, the part that's part of the Northeast, the NS's north-south rail service lane, has some additional sidings and double track, but most of it uses single block passing sidings, and between Roanoke and Front Royal, it is to this day still largely unresignaled. It's being resignaled, but slowly, and it still has a lot of color position lights and interlockings. The B line between Front Royal and Hagerstown had some resignaling, but also maintained its position lights up until about 2018. And I was able to get in and get a lot of the pictures before they went away, including Shepardstown Interlocking, which we're going to be visiting today. So this is my second visit was in 2017, and my first one was then here in 2007. So we're going to begin. That's the background. If anybody has any questions about that, but the reason the CPLs survived on the H line is similar to the way that they're surviving on the B&O Toledo sub. That they were one of the last resignaling projects before the industry really settled on signal replace for. Always, so before about the year 2000, the typical industry standard was to, if you had to do a resignaling, you would if the signals were serviceable, like let's say it's a Rule 251 CTC line, you do not need to change what the signals do. The easiest thing to do before that was to cut over the new signaling logic onto the old signals. Maybe spruce them up, give them a coat of paint, don't touch them, you're good to go. About the year 2000, changes in how the labor cost structure made it very much cheaper to always put up new signals. Even, basically the cost of new signaling hardware was cheaper than the cost of the man hours to test it. So you could put up new signals in parallel, get all the testing out of the way without ever having to shut down traffic, and then on one day you could basically flip a switch, turn off the old signals, turn on the new signals, turn the heads, maybe you cut over the point machines, and then at your leisure you can take down the old stuff. Or just that day, just cut it right down. No need to splice wires, no need to do a lot of testing. It's already been done, and your outage time is lower, and your man hours is lower, and also it's often able to be subcontracted. The construction phase of them often avoids CBA issues, whereas actually cutting the stuff over would be would be done by the CNS forces. Testing a whole new thing, you can subcontract that out to a third party. The typical, I'll just get going here. So you can see here, the interlocking has a fairly new a hut style thing there. That's so you can. I knew it's from the 2000s. It has the pole line was retired at the time, so they went with the what's now also been retired. For the what do you call that? The ATCS radio relays. Find a better way for this. And the H line also had its own railroad power supply, 3-phase power. Supplied via line side and the pole line you can see there. That was also retired at the time of the resignaling in around the year 2000. The signals are well painted. I don't know if they were repainted in 2000 or since then. But this, again, they had about another 10 years. I mean, in 2007, this probably was still reflecting the coat of paint they got at when the signaling was refreshed. Sorry, just checking a couple things here. There we go. One second. All right, there we go. So here we have a typical N&W. Some people call them color position lights. They're more colorized position lights, not even that fully colorized. So kind of like Amtrak's, they took an existing all amber system and grafted on some colors. Some people might not know that colors are only present on the upper head. The bottom head uses yellow for everything. So a diverging clear would have a vertical line, a yellow line on the bottom, whereas normal clear would have green on the top. This doesn't. This only usually appears when you have diverging clear. Approach. I think yeah, and also approach diverging. So technically, NS had this thing where the stop signal included that lower marker light. But honestly, in theory, a stop and proceed wouldn't have the lower marker light. That seems a little not fail-safe, and that's right. And eventually, I think they went with a typical, like, number plate system. But in the rule book, it has that lower light lamp. But they don't rely on it anywhere. There's no place where that going out will upgrade you to a stop and proceed in sort of real life. The N&W liked having these cabinet masts with the terminal block and this cabinet at the bottom. Another interesting thing is, I'll get this going here in a second. As I zoom in on stuff. So here we have the upper bit of it here. Have to brighten this guy up a bit. So this signal can display clear, approach, stop, as you can see with the upper head. But also that lower head is the, in theory it would be, let's say, diverging approach. That means if you're diverging to a stop, you get diverging approach. But remember, it's a single block passing siding. So what happens if you want to do diverge to diverge? Medium approach, medium, or diverging approach, diverging. Well, the N&W thought of that. When they introduced flashing relays, they made red over that flashing sort of approach. They made the red over the flashing slash, diverging approach, diverging. So if they didn't have that, the PR only really went with flashing relays in the mid-1950s. So if the original aspect group didn't have that, they were able to upgrade this, and to this day, if you're doing a diverge to a diverge, they just flash that lower aspect. And here we have that lower head. The N&W signals have slightly different. They use slightly different USNS position light like styles. These have the shield. The hood is going to be a little less pointy and more rounded. The lensing is a little bit different as well. Boy, this is really dark. Not the greatest pictures I got here due to the backlighting. Probably could have shot this a little bit better back in the day, of course. But most of the time, these trains are going to get... You rarely see that diverging approach diverging. Unless the dispatcher didn't set their meet up right. So again, here we have the rear upper angle. Again, the rear hardware is all the same as you would get in the PRR. The ladders, the standing things, the modules, the mounting brackets, all that's the same. And here we have the rear. It appears, I think we took my friend's car on this one. He had an Escape. This would have been the summer that he had he was going around on a broken leg. Well, he broke his ankle. But by this point in time, this point in the summer, I think that he was mostly on the mend. There we go. Interestingly enough, in the color light version, red over yellow in NS is restricting, red over flashing yellow is diverging approach diverging, but to get that medium approach you need red over yellow over red. Mainly because in a position light system people don't realize that restricting is an implied lunar. So in a real life, so if this signal is able to do both restricting and diverging approach, etc., the top mast would be red, yellow, green, and the bottom one would be that red marker, it would be effectively red, yellow, lunar. You see that on CSX to a degree. With their seaboard system. The N&W part of NS pretty much uses USNS, likes to use USNS M3s. whereas the southern portion will tend to use GRS. This has been sticky, like especially on the Conrail portions. I think it's just mainly like they just inherit a shop workforce and parts supply that caters to one or the other, and they just keep on going since they're really pretty much interchangeable. And it keeps the vendors honest if you don't commit to just buying one. And here we have the station sign. NS does like, except in Conrail territory, NS does like using the sort of southerny green and white. Just remember that NS has been Southern and N&W combined since I think the early '80s. So they've been working together for some time now. N&W really didn't have a strong presence involving station signage. Maybe it was like white on black or something, I forget. I had to make sure that I'm properly labeling these so they won't conflict with my 2017 one. Here we have the switch frog and the northbound bracket mast. Oh shoot, I'm spelling this wrong. Let me get these nice and done here. There it goes. Okay, anyway. We have a little thing of the westbound sign with the bracket mast. Now, while most of these interlockings did involve a bracket mast, some of them are different than the others. This is the more uncommon style of bracket mast. If anyone has seen their pictures out along this line, you would have eventually seen them both. But I'll explain them in a second. Let me see how they sorry, just checking. Okay, I don't say bracket mast, I just need to say bracket. Sorry about that. So here we have the northbound bracket, very, very well painted in this 2007 photo. Well, this is what you would expect, the diverging track having two heads, so it can get diverging clear, and the main track having the one head. Because of the route signaling system on this, a lot of these things the siding signal wouldn't have that lower head. It would just have, they would both have a single head, and the siding track, because it's route signaled, there's no additional route, and the crew in the timetable would just be, see a switch speed for 10 miles an hour. I don't know why some of these are built this way. They might have had an extended station track or something. Shenandoah Junction kind of had that. But I don't know what you think. You'd have to go back in time to see what the difference, what they were thinking of back in the day. Wait, why am I saying westbound? It's southbound. It's hard to get used to switching to a north-south. There's so many fewer north-south rail lines in this country. Northbound. Ugh, these names, just awful. For my old naming convention. Yeah, there's nothing worth salvaging in any of those. It's also nice how the main track has a finial on the mast, that little pointed bit, where the siding track does not, for whatever reason. Might have lost it, might have been due to a modification, not entirely sure. Yeah, it is very strange that that they went with not that marker is for stop as opposed to a stop and proceed type of thing. Well, that's the end of part one right there. I don't think I see any questions. If I'm not answering, I'm still having chat issues. If I'm not answering any questions, tell Brian to send me a DM. I get those. Both times I visited about the time of day when you had nice lighting northbound. And not only can we see that the that lower head provides, I think part of it is that they when they needed to show when they needed to give a restricting indication, that's when they would get in there with the they would get in there with that lower head. So in this case, it's going onto a single track over the bridge, sort of a bottleneck. And they probably wanted to be able to display that restricting. You can't really have that. I mean, you could have just have both of them have a straight route and both of them have a restrict. I don't know. For example, the other track doesn't have a restricting indication. Oh, that worked. Anyway, beautiful picture, beautiful thing of the bracket mast and the interlocking there. And also very, very nice paint job. So here we have the foundations on these bracket masts are also quite impressive. They go down pretty deep. Just adjusting a couple things. There we go. Because in my original one, let's see what I had a picture of. That's the rear. Oh, I took a lot of pictures. Yeah, by 2017, I was just doing tons. So this is what it looks like in 2017 with my better camera and better and you know, more crisp winter day. Maybe I can show you one where of the lower head. And how all the lamps are yellow. They're all yellow. But also those hoods are a much shorter, more subdued than the PRR ones. So it looks like I intended to take a to get each of the two bracket signals. If you don't know, brackets are a way that you can govern two tracks with having a mast on one side. This is, again, in steam locomotives you had to have the signals mounted to the right. So this puts the signals to the right of both tracks, and they're high enough that if there's an intervening train, you can look up and still see your signal. On the in Ohio, in the New York Central, I mean, in the mid '80s, the FRA relaxed the rule against signals being mounted only to the right. And in Ohio, the New York Central had installed brackets. So for bidirectional, you'd have a bracket in each direction, each with two signals pointed in the same direction. As soon as around some point when the FRA relaxed that rule, Conrail took each of those brackets and rotated one of the signals around. So you'd have bracket masts on both sides of the track, but they would only be governing that track adjacent to them. And they did that to for double stack. When they went to double stacks, the double stacks would have been too high for the train to see the signal if there was an intervening train next to it. So that was Conrail's solution, was to rotate one of the brackets to have them, basically turn them into extra tall masts. So then, just again, I sort of knew what I was up to at this point. Getting these extra details. I do have better version of this in the future. The photos future. But I'm not gonna. There's no point in throwing these photos away, especially when they can show how the painting changed or other stuff like that. In fact, if we go forward in time here, you can still see, we can see if the brush strokes are the same. Oh, it looks like they're different. Maybe it was touched up at some point. What's also interesting is the signals are painted, but not the where is that? The signals are painted, but the mast is still rusty for the top. But the main trunk of that bracket was also painted silver. I guess that masty thing was a little bit too difficult. We can also see what cheap repaint job the main track signal did. The head got repainted, but it was clearly one of those sort of, let's spray, we'll take a spray gun and repaint it. They didn't do any sanding. They didn't prepare the base, looks like, at all. Because that new coat of black paint's just starting to immediately flake right off. They really need to have prepared that base a bit better. Here we have my sort of, I won't say this is really a below, it's more of a close shot. Sun is really coming down from overhead. You can see by those shadows making the PL heads look a little bit bigger. And going around to the back. Can't really escape the backlighting here, but it's not quite as bad as some other angles. That's what the advantage of going in the winter. All those leaves blocking my sight line were gone. And here we have the interlocking looking north. Looks like both those tracks are getting pretty good usage. And another slight angle on the mast. I think I took this because the lighting improved, but I'm going to keep both versions of the photo. Yeah, that's some very, very new looking paint there they put on it. And the engineer side angle of the uppers, the southbound mast, I mean. Like I said, in 2007, these sorts of, or 8, or both these years, these sorts of signal pictures exist, but they're not too bad. But if you were today, it would just be days upon days upon days of me just going and doing tons of these every last angle signal photo. And the end of part 2, where we have the M23. Even the ballast looks more similar to Conrail than I think. Although NS ballast might be, or NW ballast might be a little bit lighter than that. The Conrail ballast was very, very gray. I don't know where exactly it was coming from, but they had a very specific quarry that was producing pretty nice a very distinctive gray ballast. Not distinctive so much, but very uniform across the whole system. Like the B&L has a lot of white ballast. This is light. This might be the Conrail, Kyle. I'm not entirely sure. It looks a bit lighter than Conrail stuff. Oh, we're just about to get to Hancock. So let me just do one more. So that's all I did for this tip. When I came back 10 years later, instead of taking less than like 25 photos, I took probably 150. So let me just get this last one going, and I'll check the chat, see if anyone has any, and I'll go on about talk about Hancock. All right. While this loads, I'll give a quick preamble here. Hello, Gary. Thanks for joining. Okay, back to the map. So, by the way, I have taken photos. There's a little park right there with an obelisk of some kind, and you can get some really nice photos on this bridge looking over the Potomac. A lot of good whatchamacallit. A lot of good rail action there, too. All right. So the NW H line and the B&O mainline cross here at was called known as Shepardstown Junction. This was re-signaled a little bit earlier than the other one. Quick picture of what you get at Shepard's. This even had a restricting slash for both northbound movements. By the way, this is an interesting thing where in 2012 the Google Street View did catch a diverging approach indication on the southbound on that mass signal there. So that's always interesting. If you're ever on Street View looking at railroad stuff, sometimes you'll catch interesting lineups on the signals. Let's just go over here to Shenandoah Junction, see if I can pull up anything. So this is 20. Let me see how far I can go back in time. 2014. Oh yeah, they totally moved the interlocking. So yeah, there's this extra track here. That's the interchange with CSX. The southbound mast was over there, and then the one switch was here. And you can see they had this little extra track coming in, but this was not considered part of sort of, even though it's kind of within interlocking limits, didn't have like an entry signal. So I don't know how that would sort of worked. Oh yeah, you can see that they're getting ready to re-signal it there in 2014. All right, back to the thing. So here's the B&O. The first stop I want to say is in around the year 2000. In 2003, the tower is still there. There's the next tower is NA Tower in Martinsburg. I know I've done a live stream with it before. Somehow it survived. It's right there. There's also an old roundhouse complex that's sort of a museum. And they also have, still there, our tower, which used to be, or sometimes called Miller, or Cherry Run. Has a bunch of different names. That was relocated, and I'll show you where that was, but that was relocated when it was closed again in the early 2000s. It's right there. They haven't really done much with it. It's just sitting there, not doing well. But at least it's part of, the music. Until someone sets it on fire, it's okay. Continuing on. So this was WB Tower. In the early 2000s, this whole thing here over Harper's was Rule 251. Then you get to the next thing was going to be... Is this it? This should be it. There it is. West Cumbo interlocking. Former location of W Tower. W actually was wooden, but it actually had a GRS pistol grip machine. One of the more modern ones, not a Taylor. This is an interesting part of the line because the B&O actually has a low-grade track 4 on it that goes out of its way to avoid some of the grades in this section. I bet because it's part of the sub that the Amtrak crews have to be qualified on it, but I've never been on an Amtrak train that's taken it. It's probably going to add about 15 minutes to the trip. You can, if you want to check the terrain of why that's necessary. The existing one sort of goes up this way, cuts through this valley, around the hill, and then down. The other one goes all the way up in the valley, all the way up to the Potomac, and then along. So what does this get you is they then meet at the next location. Again, had a tower around the year up until about 1999-2000. Cherry Run interlocking, a.k.a. Miller, a.k.a. R Tower. This is also where there was a connector to across the Potomac to the Western Maryland, and that's the interchange that you get with to get to Hagerstown. So again, for the longest time, now you're in a sort of a 4-track scenario. So I don't know if that low grade line was 2-tracked at some point. Now it's sort of, so you have a little stretch of 3 mains. Up until a point in time, it was 3 or 4 tracks, and then it became sort of 3. And the next station we have, the next tower we have, is Hancock, and that's the one that survived until 2007. There's a little yard there. It had remote control of one remote interlocking called Grasshopper Hollow. There was a scale there, and there's a lot of U.S. Silica has a big quarry complex down in there. I think that it and it has rail service. Big sand mine in West Virginia, of all places. And now so Hancock although I say it's Hancock, West Virginia, it's really Hancock, Maryland. Hancock is located at that place where Maryland is only 1.8 miles wide. You can sort of walk across it. It's also the location where I-70 leaves the state of Maryland and heads north to the famous turnpike junction of Breezewood, where that photo is taken. Or you can avoid the turnpike and take U.S. Interstate 68 to Morgantown and then up to Pittsburgh. So normally, because PA has higher gas taxes, for a while you'd want to tank up there, but now the prices in Hancock are actually more expensive than they are in Breezewood, so that's no longer good advice. If you're wondering where this is on your Google Maps, it's up there. So at this point, all the way to Cumberland, which is there, this bit was CTC'd, with the CTC tower being at right in here, Patterson Creek. Then there was another tower at Mexico. That was closed pretty early on. And then again, up through about 1990, you had a tower at Viaduct Junction, or the mid-1990s. There was a tower in Cumberland, Viaduct Junction. Continuing on, there'd be a tower at Hindman, then Sand Patch, and then finally VI. So there's a lot of towers in this route around the turn of the 20th century, 21st century. Okay, that out of the way, we can begin with our photos. And we're going to start off with a bang here. Now, I might have taken some photos before I asked the guy, just in case. I didn't want to get, if he got mad, I didn't want to lose off on all my opportunities. But I forget what order I did things in. If I said hi and then I got the stuff or not. This is where you all get to learn about how mechanically worked points work. And you can't see these anymore. The last mechanical switch pipeline in the United States was removed in 2010. And there's also none in Canada. You can go see them in the UK and a lot of places around the world where they do use pipelines instead of, some places use wire. We use pipelines. If you use wire, you have to have a 2-wire system, a lot of pulleys. Stuff can go sproing. Every switch is going to have 2 pipes. One to move the switch, one for the facing point lock. What's a facing point lock? Facing point lock, it's called that because in the UK, you needed them for facing points. A point set in, that where a train that if the switch becomes unlocked in the direction of travel could derail or divert the train. What does a facing point lock do? It basically does, so it locks it for safety. It basically slides it. It basically, the lever actuates a metal rod that prevents the points from moving, independent of the other switch lever that moves the points. Normally, that's enough to keep the points from moving, but this is extra, you can say it's extra safety. The actual thing it does, I'm only saying it does that, but in the United States context, the facing point lock provides positive, is your point detection. The lever will not throw if the points are not properly aligned, and that not only affects the mechanical locking logic, but also the electric logic with a controller box, a circuit controller. And this was especially important after 1920 when the ICC implemented what they call the switch signal rule, switch signal logic. That means for any track over restricted speed, the route must be proved electrically to display that signal, and the circuit path to display the signal must be directly enabled by the points being in the right position. So that means you need to have point detectors that close circuits that then enable the signal to be displayed over those points. And there's even a relay called the SS, the switch signal relay. So here we have the number 19. So you probably want to see a diagram of this, of what Hancock looks like. I should have done that first. So what does Hancock have? And you can even see some of the stuff. The Hancock has both mechanical levers for the switches and this box of unit levers for the signals. At the time, it had a full crossover. It had a connection to the U.S. silica mine, and it had a ladder into the yard. And we can see that it used to have a third main track and switches that would support the main track, in addition to switches that would support parallel movements. This 20 switch, the 22, 21 switch there, and this 12, 13. Notice that even though the switches are gone, the facing point locks probably still are inactive. So in addition, compared to a Model 14, like the one they had at WB Tower, everything has its own lever. You have a crossover, you're pulling two levers, and you're pulling, although the facing point locks would work in pairs. That's because they don't move a lot of mass. And again, you can then see that third track that used to exist up into a point of time, how it's sort of been poorly painted out. And to the west, there's a controlled siding, although again, it was a third main track. And then your unit signal levers are below down here. But this is cheating. Getting a bit ahead of myself there. If you go to a lot of these old, you can see the pipelines are mounted on these concrete piers. If you go to a lot of old tower locations, you can find those the footings of those piers or the piers themselves hanging around them. Oh, so like I said, you need two levers. So this is where the pipelines break out with bell cranks. One of these is the facing point lock. There's the bell crank for it. One of these throws the switch. There's the bell crank for it. There's one more switch to the west of here, and you got two pipelines to go work it. Notice how normally back in the day when these were well maintained, it was very easy to throw these. The pipes were straight. Everything was greased and lubricated. They know this tower's closing. There's very little grease on this thing. Also, I remember if you saw in the first day in WB, one of the B&O CPL dwarfs was mounted on exactly a pipeline stand. You can see it's exactly the same hardware right there. They just have those two little pipes for the thing they put the CPL on. And look how bent these the last mile pipes are that go through the right of way. I'm ashamed I only got out there once, and I feel privileged that I was able to before this. There isn't even one of these in preservation in the United States. This is the 24 switch pipeline breakout. .24 switch is this guy right there. 24, 25. That's the most west one. So the 19 and then 24, 25 is going to be the last set. Now wait, did I get that first one wrong? I think this is the 24 switch. Or maybe not. Oh, don't need that guy anymore. Oops. Yeah, this is different. All right, I'm going to accept that as face value. So now we have, this is the entire pipeline run. We have, at this point, we have two pipes for the 19 switch. Facing point and the 19 pipe. The next thing and then for the 24, 25, 24 has a pipe, 25 has a pipe, and they both have a facing point lock. And that facing point lock is 26. Almost everything in the United States is going to have a facing point lock due to that regulation. The UK, that's not the case. For people who say that Europe takes rail safety more seriously, that's kind of not in evidence. There's a lot of weird stuff that they let people get away with. This is a really nice picture too. Just with the tower in the background and the pipeline running out. Pipeline systems were really, really complicated. And also I got a beautiful day to have these pictures. Pipeline systems could get quite complicated. And then here we can see this is the 24 switch, and there's two more again. One of these will actuate the facing point lock for both, and then you finally have your 25 switch all the way down there. And this, you can see the new signal bridges up. There's the old B&O 4-track one. They did remove one of the tracks out of interlocking, so this had a number of interlocked yard tracks, and they were like, we don't need that. Who cares? So one did stay interlocked with they put a dwarf signal in, or it had dwarf. Oops. I'm going to keep these largely the same here, the names. They're generally okay. I had full access to the labeling and all the other stuff back then. And the tower's gone. So again, here we have the 25 switch pipeline breakout. One of these for the FPL, and one of these is going to be for the switch itself. The nearer one, I believe, is going to be your facing point lock, because the facing point, maybe not. Maybe those, no, maybe I think I'm actually not sure. We'll have to see. I don't think I got quite good enough photos of the FPL stuff. I really should have better ones, but I did the best I could. Probably also going to keep a whole bunch of these photos as full quality references. Not that I get rid of photos. These are stuff I've already done. I'm redoing them now. But sometimes I don't keep them on hand. I got to go to the disk. But full high res references of these is definitely going to be useful. So you have the full run of the pipeline. Unfortunately, I didn't have the guy there was a kid. He was like younger, like 20s. A clerk. They pull their tower operators. There's also they're in the clerk pool. So that means sort of a yard office type of thing. And he did a little bit of he threw one for me in the tower. But I think he was a little bit wary of having something get stuck. And I wasn't in a position to really, hey, can you throw it forward? Hey, can you throw it back? That sort of thing. And again, here's another angle. These are, if you don't know, these are called bell cranks, and they do 90-degree turns. Push pull turns into an in and out, or an in and out turns into a side to side. And they see whatever say what you will. CSX, well, they did a good job. Like there's no. Maybe if I went over there, but I couldn't really find any evidence of this stuff being around. You also see how they mount this. They're adjustable. They put these rails in, then they can slide the bell crank in and move it around a little bit if they need to. There's a shipping container with unfortunately new palletized switches ready to go in. And then here we have the eastbound signal bridge. Oh man, this 4-track bridge not being there anymore is another big loss. This is such a cool thing. I hadn't known this even before my digital camera era. I was aware of Hancock Tower, and I have a film photo of going by on the Capitol Limited of it. I don't remember if I have a picture of it after it closed. It wasn't demolished immediately, but it was demolished pretty soon after. But I might have caught a picture of it being closed. Okay. I guess I'm doing the whole thing here. So, an interesting thing that I found was that of how the signals all had R and L despite being a GRS installation. So this is going to be... Why do I only have like half a... I know I have a better picture of the damn diagram. Do I? There it is. That's going to be the 52L, 55L, 54, and then two 54Ls and a 57L. So... I don't really have much I can cut in this. I wish I could just take off a sliver, but I don't want to cut that pole line off. Yeah, I just made it a non-standard size before. Well, let's see what I can do. $52L and $55L. $52L, $55L, 254s and a 57. Alright, I can do better than this. Let's see what I can do here. Whoops. Sorry, I'm just fine-tuning the size on this. Alright, that works. Here's an unfortunate blur photo of the 52L and the 55L. Despite everything here, the signals at Hancock are very conventional. Not a lot of weirdo routes. So here we have a central target, and then a 12 o'clock orbital for straight, and a 6 o'clock orbital for medium speed diverging. And of course, you can get going in down the silica mine would get you a restricting. And another blurry one that I managed to get for whatever reason. This is the 54LA and LB. Technically on the diagram it just says L, they're both 54L. I'm using a USNS convention where if you have one signal, you can have multiple signals on the same lever depending on what the switch positions are. So depending on what switch is set on these, the 54L will clear the appropriate one. USNS does this with A and B, C, D, etc. And then finally we have this little dwarf signal here. That's going to be the 57. Plus a little rail joint. I do get some closer ones of this. Oh, yeah, I don't need to save these around. Or maybe I do. I don't know. Sorry, I'm just checking what I have here. Okay, next set. How many are left after this? 61. So I can either do a really, really long set tomorrow or something bigger today. We'll see where we're at when I get done this. Do we have any questions here? Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you should get that posted somewhere for the sounds. Yeah, my Amtrak tower operator friend would literally, back before I had a cell phone, would give me his cell phone and call me, and he would pull up lineups and do all sorts of crazy stuff. This guy was a little bit more conservative. And I also, the reason I think I didn't meet, I waited on these photos. I sat on these photos for a little while before I did them up and put up a thing on it. Just so the guy wouldn't get in any trouble. So we have this 52L. This was going to be the 55. Yeah, nothing. I said nothing super exciting about these guys. They are pretty conventional for what they are. You know, just medium speed B&O turnouts. The most exciting stuff on the CPLs are usually for anything where is the approach signal. Because that's where you're going to get all your wacky medium approach mediums, or I mean, that's where you're going to get your weirdest orbit. You more consistently will get interesting orbitals at those locations as opposed to these. Yeah. All right, I'm done with this. All right, and next one is going to be one of the 57s, 57 LA. I don't remember if this guy was like, yeah, don't stand in the track, please. Or if I just was doing that myself. And LB. I love the little, on the gantries, you would always have, on the B&O signal bridges, you would always have these wonderful little doghouse ventral baskets for the guys, the maintainers, to go and change the bulbs on the under orbitals, as well as you had a lower walkway to get the target. Then you have the upper walkway for upper orbitals, and they'll have these little these little ventral gondolas for the for the lower ones. And finally, we have our picture of Hancock Tower itself. This is in the CSX final late phase tower paint scheme with the gray and the blue. Conrail had something similar, but I think it had a different shade of blue. The Jeep there is the guy's is the operator's car. Hancock had a lot of interesting bump outs. I'm not entirely sure what they all were. I think that the rear area was probably just wasn't necessarily for like the operator space. When we went in there, it was sort of pretty small. Like you didn't see that bump out. You can see it when we get out. We do the internal photos. Maybe save a slightly larger version of this. Hard to tell if it's tilted a little bit. Might need to straighten a little bit more. There it goes. Alright, I think that's good. And we got this nice photo here. Yeah, I was pretty surprised they didn't try to do something with, because they sucked up our tower to get that preserved, and I was kind of surprised that nothing came about trying to deal with this one. Although there are a lot of issues. A lot of times, especially these wooden towers, when they go in there, they're just usually they can have a lot of structural integrity problems that aren't evident because the interlocking machine really holds these things up. And if you don't really have that there, or it's compromised in some way, that can be a real problem for getting them preserved. And so you have the 18 switch pipeline. 18 switch is this guy. So the 1918, that turnover is pretty long there. If we zoom in, they kept the same geometry. So would be the 19 switch, and the 18 is all the way up there. And you can see how close to the tower was originally there. And again, we have 2 for the 19, 3 for the 24-25, and the 18 is coming right out, is breaking out right here. But one thing I do want to point out, remember the 18 has one dedicated lever for the points, this one right there with the bell crank, and the lock is conjoined with the 19 right there. So the pipe goes in, has this little takeoff, and it continues on to the 19 switch facing point lock, and this takeoff moves its own independent bell crank. Seeing those turn in unison would have been if I had one thing I got to capture on video, that would be the thing to capture. How the FPL lock affects both ends of the crossover. Here we have the pipeline run out going towards the 19. And here we have where the pipelines are entering the building. Looks like it's just above a door for the basement. So whatever's going on, they had a lot of, there's probably a lot of fun stuff in that basement area. And here we have the 18 switch. They should be labeled there. And that's where you can see the facing point lock. There's the little scale hut. I think that's where the scale was. Yeah. I don't know if the... So, hold on here. Let me just get this going. So here we have the first one. Like I said, yeah, the first one's so that's the actual facing point lock. The bell crank makes this rod go in and out of that device, and in there is a slot that a bar from the switch will slot into, and has two positions, and one of them will line up with the bar, with the FPL, and then The facing point lock doesn't care which position it's in. It's only locked or unlocked. It will lock the switch in either of the two actual positions the switch can be in. So this unlike the switch lever, the facing point lock will lock even if the switch is moved. There's two slots in the horizontal bar, and this vertical bar right there can plug into them. Also, when the switch moves and the lock engaged at the circuit controller will also engage. I think that's based on the actual points, and then this one is for the is for the mechanical logic in the tower. And here we are looking above I do get close to one, but this gives you a good view from the tower. Now I'm in the tower, or I'm on the stairs, and I get this beautiful shot of the number 15 switch, and that's going to be this guy right here. So it's only a single-ended one. So there's only going to be one. The facing point lock only does one switch. Yeah, I'm not in the tower. That had gnarly blinds. And we can again see the switch lever throws the switch. Remember those A5 switch machines yesterday? I was telling you how that's same connector with the spring buffer. And there's the detector bar that extends out, and there's your facing point lock. The lock in is locked, and it pulls back out, and then you can move this to the next position, and you can put that right back in, and then there's your circuit controller going back to the relay logic in the tower, and that's why you have with the electric switch. That's why with the lever operated switches, of course, or signals. We can see the new pipeline, the new stuff for the electric switches are already sort of going in. And the same thing with the 18 switch. Oh, wait, I do need to do a thing. All right, so in this last one, I did a close-up. That's number 67. I was wondering, well, if I was going to do something like that. Yeah, it's nice to have a little close-up view here. I don't usually do close-ups in these things, but this is definitely a good time for an exception. And then we have this last one, like I mentioned, for switch 18. Yeah, by the way, FYI, I've heard that Alto is facing the same issues. It's been riddled with it. It's apparently the structural integrity of it is very, very poor. Lots of termite damage. The guy never sent me the thing. They literally did a report on its preservation, and the guy I was talking to, he'd been advocating just stripping it all down and just rebuilding it out of wood. It's wood. You can rebuild it. but the other people in this org were the Railroaders Museum of PA really wanted to move the original object, but he said that was unrealistic from day one, and that unfortunately it's been slowly getting stolen out of it. So they could have gotten all the architectural details and everything inside of it, then rebuilt a new tower. So sometimes sometimes going for the sometimes it's not necessarily best to try to preserve the full thing. He had this really intricate 3-wing binder with the preservation plan. It used a lot of my photos. I was like, hey, can you send a copy of this to me? And I was like, I gave him my contact info, but he didn't give me his. And he never got back to me. I'm like, God damn it. I knew I should have gotten his phone or something. Been more insistent. Okay. Let's see where we're at here. So let me see how far. Okay, I feel like I should just stop here because we're really about to move into the interior, and that's going to mean for a much longer day tomorrow. Not much, just an additional set of photos tomorrow. But I don't want to start going into the interior and then have to repeat myself tomorrow. So we managed to just cut at the point where we've hit the interior photo. The full interior photos. Voila. And I will then be going on with that. So we'll see. Let me just check a couple of things here. There's that picture. Is this the same one that I just zoomed in? So it was funny because I get there, I go up, I knock on the door, the guy's there, and he's like, well, you want to take pictures? I'm like, okay, and I just take out my camera and start taking pictures of his workplace. That's always fun. That was a little awkward. But, okay, that's it for today. Let me see if anybody has any additional questions. We'll have to get up early Thursday. Oh, that's good. Yeah. So, what time is it now? It's about midnight. Yeah. I should, we'll see how fast I can go through things tomorrow. It's probably going to be a lot of good, not all of the photos. The final ones are going to just be sort of like, here's the signal bridge, and here's the signals again, but they're lit up. So, I can get through a bunch of those a little bit quicker toward the end. All right, I'm going to call it a day here. I don't see any additional questions in the chat. So you guys have a wonderful day. I'm going to be out on the NEC tomorrow, even if Amtrak's not running any additional trains. I got a couple places I like to go. Probably be in Bristol. And then Thursday, we're going to finish this up tomorrow. And then I'm not going to let Thursday go to waste. I will find something to do on Thursday. I do have a bunch of stuff. I'm going to do this one. I'm going to do this California. I'm going to finish up this San Francisco stuff. Although not really finish it because I still have another Caltrain thing to go. But we're going to see if on Thursday night, I'm going to see if I can get rid of this San Francisco photos. There might be some I can cut or something about it. But we can get through those in one way or another. So there's probably some cuts I can make or just try to power through it using my previous photos. So, okay. That's going to be on Thursday. Thanksgiving Day, that might go a little bit late. And then I will then see you again for a lot of stuff over Christmas, and we'll figure out what that is. But anyway, I'm going to sign off right now, and you guys have a great great day. All right, see ya.